for our teacher interview um, webinar. So I'm really excited about it. I'm just waiting for people to come into the webinar now. Let me just check and see if we're live. And we should be, but let me just see. Yes, we are. Good, good. Checking Facebook. One more time. And it looks like we're live. Okay, great. Just wanted to make sure we're live on all of our things. Good morning, Laura. Good morning. Good to see you here today. Let's see. All right, so today we are talking about the teacher interview portion of this two-part series that I've been doing for the teacher resume and interview. We're going to focus today on interview questions and things like that. People are just starting to come into the webinar, so I'm just going to go over a couple of things really quickly. Number one, this is recorded, so when it's over with, you'll be able to access it. If you actually registered for the webinar, you're going to get the handouts and the links and all of that when this is over. If you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube, there is a link in the description where you can register if you haven't already, so you can get the handouts and things that I'll be talking about today. Good morning, Tiffany. Good morning, Christina. So glad to see you here. So the people I'm talking to are actually inside the webinar, the live webinar. They signed up, so they're not on Facebook or YouTube. They're inside my little classroom, whatever, on Vimeo. So if you want to participate in the chat, you got to kind of come in here and visit me here. So there's a link in the description if you're online, Facebook or YouTube, and you can click it, register, you'll get the link, and then you can join the webinar here. So I'm really excited to see you guys coming in here. Okay, so the other thing I want to let you know is that the handouts we're going to be using today will be sent to you in an email if you registered. So I'm going to be going through like this quick PowerPoint, not death by PowerPoint, just some things for you guys to have a look at. And then I will send that to you in an email if you've registered for this particular course. And the final thing I want to tell you is that if you're looking for more, so I've had a lot of people send me their resumes after last week's session, which is great. But like you can imagine how many resumes I get. I get all kinds of requests for resumes. There is absolutely no way that I would be able to edit everybody's resume. So I'm having a two-part live course that is more in depth. It's 2 hours for the resume, and then the following weekend is 2 hours for the interview. And these are actually set up as like a Zoom meeting. So you will be able to talk to me. We will be working on it together. And so that's just how I can handle so many resume requests. I have a course, and there's a link in the description below if you're watching live, but it is a paid course. It's on sale until March 31st, 20% off. It's usually $199. It's $159 right now. And somebody suggested, can I just buy the interview, or can I just buy the resume? Yes, you can. I split them. So if you don't need help with the interview and you just want help with your resume, you can grab that. If you need both, you can grab both. I'll talk more about that at the end of the webinar, but I know you guys have questions, but I cannot, there's no way for me to edit everybody's resume. It's thousands that I get requests for, and it's me. This is the business right here. It's just me. So I am doing that course. It's going to be great. We're going to be able to talk to each other. It's in meeting form. So it's small group. And so if you're interested in that, definitely stay till the end of this webinar, and I'll be talking more about that. Okay, we got people coming in. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. We had over 700 people sign up for this webinar. So they may be watching live with me today, or they may be watching later because it is Saturday, 10 a.m. Eastern, and it might be early where you are, and you might want to sleep in today. So like I said, everything's recorded, and we're going to get started. So this particular webinar is going to help you with an actual sit-down interview with a principal or a panel. Sometimes you go in for an interview and there's a whole panel of people there. It can be very intimidating, especially if you're an administrator. If you're trying to get hired as an AP or a principal, there's definitely going to be a panel, and you'll probably have to go through a series of interviews. For teachers, often if you come into the school, it's probably going to be the principal, obviously, maybe a few members of the admin team, and then also perhaps a teacher, or sometimes they'll even bring in a staff member or a custodian or something like that, especially if a principal wants to include people in, his or her staff in on the interviewing process. So you might interview with one person, or you could interview with 10 people. It's up to the principal. The second thing is this will also help you for the job fair. So in a job fair, it's quick. You only have 5 minutes maybe to talk to the principal or representative from the school. So you got to make sure you use these keywords and things I'm going to tell you today in a pinch. I remember my first job fair interview. I had no idea what I was talking about. I sounded like an idiot. Even the principal looked at me like, I've never heard of that before. So don't do that. I'm going to show you how to avoid that. But yeah, so we've got people from the Philippines. Welcome. Lexington, South Carolina, Delaware, Kenya. Awesome. That's fantastic. Tennessee. So good to see you guys here. All right. So, and the final thing I want to tell you is these are the things I'm telling you to do in the interview, but they're important things for you to do like always in your classroom. So, yes, these are buzzwords. Yes, these are things that are going to help you land a job. But once you get the job, you really need to make sure that you do these things because that's what's going to help you be a better teacher. That's what they're looking for. And so that's really important. Okay. All right. So let's get started. I'm going to send this to the stream. Hopefully you can see my PowerPoint here. Looks like it's good. Okay. So the title of this webinar is 3 essentials of a standout interview. And I'm going to go through 3 essential things you can do, 3 questions you're going to be asked. It's a theme of 3s here. So we're going to go through that. So the first thing you're going to want to do is before you do anything, and if you're going to a job fair or an interview, you are going to want to research the school. So you might have 3 or 4 interviews lined up and you might, be talking to a couple people. You want to research the school. Now you can do that on the school district's website. Every school usually has their own kind of deal going on with the district website, or you can do it on the school website. And the reason why you want to do this is because some schools are art schools. Some schools are big time football schools. Some high schools have like a crazy football team. I see some people from Texas in here, and I'm sure that you guys know the high schools. The Texas football is really a big deal in high school and things like that. And the reason why I say this is because principals, their schools are like their children. They spend all their time at their schools. So you need to it's like kind of getting to know someone's child. When somebody says, "Hey, I saw your kid got first place at the spelling bee," or something like that, you're all proud and excited. That's how principals feel about their schools. And so if they have a bad football team, don't talk about the football team. That is like the worst thing to do. But if they're an art school, they won some awards, something, just pull something out from the school and maybe say, "Hey, I noticed that you guys are number 1 in blah, blah, blah." And it just helps the principal to know that you did your homework and that you kind of looked over the school. When I hire somebody for my business and they don't know anything about what I do, I don't really want to hire them. You know what I mean? I want somebody who understands what we're doing here and how we, deliver our message. And so it's really important you research the school. The second thing is be prepared for how you are going to support reading and math in the school. So this actually kind of links to the research the school part. If your school is really trying to raise, or the school you're trying to get a job in, if they are trying to raise reading scores or math scores, and that's one of the school goals, and the school goals will usually be on the website somewhere, either in the vision or mission statement or somewhere in there, you're going to need to be prepared for questions about how you will support reading and math, even if you're not a reading and math teacher. We're going to talk about it in a minute. I'm going to give you specifics that you can say. But yeah, that's really, really important. And then the final thing is think before you speak. And so this is something that I struggle with. When someone asks me a question, I'm ready for the answer. I'm like talking for 5-10 minutes about on and on and on. Be careful. Don't ramble too much. Think before you speak. And I'll give you a quick example of where I saw this done really well. So I was an assistant principal. We were interviewing a band director, and that's a big time position in a high school. Band director is like we were interviewing people from all over the country for this particular position. And when we asked him a question, he sat for like 5 seconds before he answered. And I was totally impressed. I stole that from him because I thought it made him look very measured and pragmatic and really trying to think about what we asked him. Now, 5 seconds is actually a really long time. Let's just see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a pretty long pause, and that's hard for us to do. That's really hard for me to do. But you can pause for a second. Just let the question sink in before you speak and think about your answer. And don't worry about the pause. The pause actually impresses someone like me or even a principal, like, she's really, or he's really thinking, or she's really thinking about what I'm asking. And so don't be afraid to take a second and think. All right. And you might even say to the principal, can I just have a couple seconds to think about that? And of course, he or she will say, yes, of course, take your time. And take your time, because if you want the job, you're going to need to take your time. Don't take too long. You don't want to be sitting there for 5 minutes, but just a second to think about what they said and speak. All right. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. So now we're going to move into some common questions you might be asked about in the interview. Okay. Now, this is something that I go over in my book, Teach, How Survival Guide for New Teachers. There's a little reflection portion in here as to why you want to be a teacher. Now, you might say, and we asked this question to every single person who came in to apply for a job when I was hiring teachers. And you might think, well, why do you want to be a teacher? That's simple. But I tell you that this question stumped so many people, because the answer might be internally obvious to you. Like, I want to be a teacher because, well, I need a job. That's a good enough answer. Also, I really like kids, or I want to inspire people, or things like that. And so you need to figure out a way to articulate this clearly to the principal or the assistant principals and things like that, because you're going to want to, people are going to want to understand why you want to be a teacher. And it seems like a simple question, but it's not. And I've seen so many people sit there stumped, sweating, wondering what answer the principal is looking for. Okay. So here are a couple of ways in which you can answer this question. You can say, I want to help students achieve their goals. I love math, and I really want to teach math, and I want to teach somebody how to love math the way I love math. Great answer. Okay. You could say, I'm obsessed with reading, and I really want to share my love of reading, and I want to teach students techniques on how to be better readers and things like that. That's a great one too. You can even share a story. A teacher in my life inspired me. And, I have a teacher. I'll just give you my own personal example. I had a teacher named Mr. Godley in high school. He was a high school social studies teacher. He was awesome. He wanted us to think outside the box. He wanted us to challenge authority. He wanted us to think about things differently. He never told us how to think. He just showed us, or what to think. He just showed us how to find the answers. And he made us all do Model United Nations and all this stuff. And he was incredible. And so if I wanted to use that example, I could say, I was so inspired by Mr. Godley. I want to have that effect on students. I want to inspire students like that. Okay. So think about a way in which you would answer this. You don't need to go on and tell your entire life story, but you do need to have an answer to this question, because I can't tell you how many times I see people deer in headlights. Like, I don't know. So think about it, reflect. I do have a little bit of reflection in my book, Teach. Some of you have gotten this book already. In the beginning, it talks about it and some ways in which you can kind of think about, the how, the what, the why, and all of that about being a teacher. Okay. The next common question you're going to hear, and this one stumps a lot of people too, is, what does a typical lesson in your classroom look like? That should be a question mark there. So I will fix that before I send that out to you guys. So this one can be very difficult for brand new teachers who have never taught before. And you might get this at a job fair. I got this at a job fair once, and I was completely stumped. What does a typical lesson look like in your classroom? All right. So write this down. I also have this structure laid out in the book, Teach. I always used this simple structure in my lessons every day for 7 years. Okay. So the first thing you want to focus on is the typical lesson is aligned to the state standards. Okay. So that's going to be the first thing that comes out of your mouth. Everything I do in my classroom is aligned to the state standards. That is music to the principal's ears. Okay. Because We need to have everything aligned. And again, you want to do this. This is not just for the interview. This is in real life. Okay. So everything I do is aligned to the state standards, and I make sure that all the objectives in my classroom are part of that. Okay. Now, when we say a typical lesson, I usually have 3 parts. I have something for the kids to do as soon as they walk in the room. So a bell ringer, and again, I go over that in my book, and I have a bunch of videos on that. Some sort of anchor activity to get them in the room, sitting down while you take attendance. That's going to show the principal that you have classroom management, because that is a classroom management technique. It's less about kind of learning at that point, and it's more about getting them in, settling them down, and getting them ready to go. Now, that might segue into, these are procedures I will practice with my students so that they understand them, right? Another classroom management, because they're not just going to know to come in and sit down and do the bell ringer. So this is an established practice that you are going to do every day in your classroom, okay? The second thing you might do is go over the bell ringer quickly after you've taken attendance. And then you are going to go over the objectives. Now, when a principal hears that you are going to go over the objectives for the learning, he or she is going to be very happy. Objectives are a big part of learning. And yes, a lot of principals make you have them on your board, right? So teachers write them on their board, and they never talk about them. The key is to talk about the objectives to the students. And so if you're talking about a typical lesson in your classroom, you would say, the bell ringer, they come in, they sit down, I take attendance, then we go over the bell ringer, then I communicate the objectives with students for what they're responsible for learning today. That's going to be a big one. And again, you should be doing this, not just in the interview, but you should be doing this as a teacher. All right. Then you might say, then we start with a whole group part of the lesson. And so we might read aloud, we might go over some math problems, whatever job you're trying to get. We might have a look at some presentations, PowerPoint or a video or something like that to get them thinking. Then we might transition into a group activity, and then we might do some individual work. So notice that when I did that, that's the I do, we do, you do method, right? The I do is the whole group. The teacher is in front of the room talking about the lesson, showing a PowerPoint, whatever that is. The we do is the group work, the small group, and the you do is the individual. All right. So there's 3 little mini components of that. And then at the end, we come back together, we debrief, we review the objectives, and we see if we've met those objectives. If we have, great. If we haven't, we will move those objectives to the next day. All right, so let's review that really quickly so you guys understand. Step 1 of a typical lesson in my classroom. Students adhere to established procedures. They come in, they sit down, and they do the bell ringer while I get attendance ready. Second step, we go over the bell ringer, and then I go over the objectives for the lesson. Step 3, we do a whole group instruction where I talk about what we're going to do, and I give examples and I show them what I'm doing. I mean, this could be history, so you're going to show pictures maybe, or video. This could be reading where we read a passage together. It could be math where you do some problems on the board, whatever it is, whatever you're trying to teach. I don't know what step I'm on. The next step is going to be small group or cooperative learning. And the next step after that is going to be, if we have time, individual work. And then before we leave the classroom and before the period is done, we come together, we debrief, and we review the objectives. And if you can kind of communicate that quickly and effectively, you're going to impress the principal, because there are some key things standing out here. Number 1, like I said, the classroom management, the established procedures with the bell ringer. Number 2, the going over the objectives that are aligned to the state standards, because you told the principal that everything you do in your classroom is aligned to the state standards. And number 3, you are doing the I do, we do, you do portion of the lesson. Okay. All right. Gosh, my mic is like going way loud. I'm trying to fix the gain here. Can everybody hear me okay? Let me know if you can hear me. It's just like my mic is going way, way up when I'm listening to it. So let me know if you guys are having trouble hearing me. All right. The next question that you might get in your interview is, how will you support school goals in reading and math? Okay. So this one was a part of the beginning slide that we were talking about. So the beginning slide is where I talked about you're definitely going to get a question about reading and math goals. Now, some people might not ask you, but a good principal is going to want to know how you're going to support reading in the content area. And so there's a very simple answer to this question. And again, you should be doing this as a teacher. I will support reading by using content area reading strategies. So if you are a social studies teacher, if you're coming in as a math teacher, and I know math teachers have a problem with this, and I totally get it, but a lot of principals want every teacher, PE teacher, health teacher, everybody to be a reading teacher. And so you might get one of those those questions from a principal and saying, how are you going to support our reading goals, right? So you might want to say, I will do everything I can in my classroom to support the school goals for reading. And it might be math too. They might ask you math, but I know they're going to ask you about reading. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to use content area reading strategies for, let's say I'm trying to be a social studies teacher. There's a ton of opportunity to read in social studies. There's a ton of opportunity to read in science. I was a science teacher. We read every day in science because guess what? Scientists read a lot. Scientists write a lot. And so there's always an opportunity. In PE, you might get a principal who wants the PE teacher. I've known lots of principals who are like, I want my PE teachers working on reading. There might be an opportunity there. Okay, so maybe we're working on soccer drills. I'm not a PE teacher, so forgive me if I kill this, but let's just say we're working on soccer drills. Before we work on the soccer drills, we might read a small informational text about soccer, whatever it is. You've got to support the reading goals in the school. And typically that is done through content area reading. Okay. Now, if you are a science teacher, the principal might ask you about math. How are you going to support math? And so all you have to do is say, when appropriate, in science class, I'm going to, incorporate those math skills and show the connection between math and science. One of the things, and reading and social studies and reading and science and all these connections, one of the biggest things, and we talk about this in the test prep and stuff like that, is cross-curricular engagement, right? So I am not just a social studies teacher. I am not just an English teacher. Those subjects cross over one another. And so you might want to communicate that to the principal saying, science is a great opportunity to read. There's tons of reading opportunities in science. Social studies has a ton of awesome informational text and primary sources we can read. I will support the reading goals of the school. So that's just something, and that will also impress your principal. Okay. All right. So there are also 3 places you should go before you go to your interview. Okay. The school district website. I talked to you about that. Definitely looking up, or the school's website, looking up how, what kind of demographics the school serves. Because you may be in a community, like there are certain communities that are around schools that are a big part of the school. You want to make sure you know that. You also want to know if there are any vision or mission statements. You might want to pepper that into what you're talking about with the principal. It's really important. Like I said before, the school is the principal's baby. And you need to know a few little tidbits about that baby so that the principal feels good about hiring you. A second place to go is my book, Teach. I know it's a shameless plug, but I'm telling you, there's a lot of information in here that's going to help you not only be a teacher, but help you with your interview. So I'll show you where to get it. But there are templates in here for what we talked about, the structure of the classroom lesson. That's all in here, and it'll really help you out a lot. There's also some reflection activities in here as to why you want to be a teacher. And the third place you should go before your interview, and this is something that I do, is if I'm driving to the interview or if I'm about to do something big, I listen to a song that totally makes me feel like I'm awesome. So usually it's a Beyonce song. Sometimes I'll listen to a TED Talk that's really inspirational, but you've got to get inspired so that you feel good about who you are. You have a lot to offer. You are somebody who can contribute to the school. So you need to think about that when you are talking to the principal. I don't mean you go in there like an arrogant jerk and you kick the door open and you say, I'm here to hire me, but you've got to kind of show some confidence. And if you have trouble with that, and a lot of people do, one way to get your confidence is to listen to Beyonce if you're a fan, or somebody else. Maybe you like, Taylor Swift or something, that somebody who gives you like confidence, or a TED talk, or maybe it's a sermon that you like. Maybe your faith is really big to you, and there's an inspirational sermon that you want to listen to, or something like that, something to get you pumped up. And I usually recommend doing that on the way, because you've prepared for the interview, you've done everything you can. Now it's time to kind of pump yourself up. And I do that. Like before today, I was on the treadmill with the Peloton app, and she was blasting like all kinds of crazy songs, and it got me in the mood to like do my webinar. You know what I mean? So it's really important to take time to do that. All right. And finally, I have one more slide here. Okay, things to remember in your interview. First, standards. Remember what we said. Everything in my classroom, everything we do is aligned to the state standards, okay? And the objectives, but the objectives really reflect the standards. The second thing you're going to want to pepper in there is how you use data. So you might get a question about, they'll definitely ask you a question about differentiation. How do you differentiate? How will you support students with different learning needs, things like that? You're going to want to say, well, I'm going to look at the data and see where some students are low, some students are high, and I'm going to differentiate based on that. And we talked about that in the resume portion as well. But if you can kind of pepper in there that I use data to make instructional decisions, your principal is going to be impressed with that. And then finally, the third thing is school goals. And that goes back to data, and that goes back to standards, because the school goals are aligned to the state standards. And we achieve goals by looking at data and things like that. And so that's really, really important. So there are an infinite amount of things you could be asked during the interview and during the job fair. But these are three kind of key points that principals and assistant principals want to hear from teachers. They want to know you're teaching to the standards. They want to know you're data driven, and they want to know that you're moving students towards the school goals. And those goals are based on the standards and data. All right. Okay. So really quickly, I just want to talk about a couple of things. So I have other videos on different things. So I talked today about bell ringers. I talked today about using data. I talked today about objectives. If you go to my YouTube channel, and let me just show you here, I have these playlists. And in the playlist under, let me see, where's my teacher training here. Hang on, this is going to play. Let's go here. You can see that I have classroom objectives, how to become a teacher. Let's see here. I've got SMART goals. I've got how to build sorry, that's for a study guide. Classroom walkthroughs, things like that. I need to add a few to this. I have, before you come back to this, I have how to use the standards, how to build objectives, how to use Bloom's taxonomy. And so those will all be in this teacher career training playlist. Okay. So if you are interested in more videos about how to do that stuff, it's all on my YouTube channel. So definitely check that out. I've got hours of video on different things like that. And I just did one on classroom management and bell ringers. And so those will be up at the top. It looks like I need to go in there and organize some videos really quickly. So come back in like 15, 20 minutes after this webinar is over, and they'll all be organized and ready for you there. So that way you can answer these questions better, because you have a better understanding. And it's not just about the questions, it's about being an awesome teacher. And so we want to do that. And the next thing I want to show you is, let me see here. Okay, there we go. So this is my teacher resume course from start to finish. Again, you can get the resume only, you can get the interview session only, and it's going to go into much more detail than we were able to go through today. Session 1 is all about the resume. We are going to work on it together. It's in a meeting form. You will be able to talk to me. I will be able to talk to you. It's going to be focused all on the formatting. You're going to get templates to use, things like that. By the time you're done with this session 1, you will have a completed, beautiful resume to have. Session 2 is all about the interview. We're actually going to go through 15 questions that I have gotten and have given to teachers and have seen. We're going to practice with them. We're going to talk about how to avoid pitfalls, things like that. And so this is going to be kind of the complete course here. So session 1, session 2, and again, you can buy just one or you can buy both. It is 20% off. It's usually $199. It's $159 right now. The next thing, let me just go back to here. I want to talk about my book really quick because there's a lot of good information in that. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get it for free. So let me share this here. Okay. So you can see if you have Kindle Unlimited, you can get my book for free. I have Kindle Unlimited because I'm a nerd and I read constantly. So I have Kindle Unlimited. The paperback is $14.99. It's physical book. And then you can get it just regular Kindle for $9.99. So in this book, there are all kinds of informations, objectives, lesson plans, classroom evaluations, interviews, everything you need is in the book for first-year teachers. So once you get your job, you're definitely going to want to pick up this book. We've gotten some really good reviews on it. I'm really excited. This was a departure from what I normally do. I'm the test prep lady, but I decided to do this book, and I really enjoyed it. I'm probably going to write some more. So anyways, definitely check that out. And then another thing I want to show you guys is I'm on TikTok right now. I'm doing shorter length videos. So make sure you follow me on TikTok. You can see it's Kathleen_Jasper. And so I'm doing all kinds of shorter videos there. Some of you like the longer videos on YouTube. They're 25, 30 minutes, and that's cool. But some people just need a shorter video. So just check it out there. I'm going to probably do a little snippet of what we talked about today on a TikTok. So definitely check that out. And I will be there. I'm just experimenting on TikTok. It's pretty cool place. And I know I'm late to the party, but I was working on some other things over the last couple of years. So, but I'm there. And so you can check that out. And then of course, Facebook and all of that. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this up to, oh, it looks like I wasn't sharing my screen on that. That's great. Okay, so I'm going to open it up to some question and answers. So let me go to here, start Q&A. So if you guys have any questions that I can answer specifically for you, let me know. You can let me know in the chat. Gabrielle says she ordered my book. Thank you so much. I'm super excited about that. And if you have any questions, go ahead and put them in. Let me check Facebook, see if anybody's got any questions. I can't comment on the post right now for some reason. So let me go back to my Q&A in Vimeo. Any questions? No questions? It's going to be an easy session. All right, so just to recap, we want to make sure that we are talking about standards, data, and school goals. We also want to have a really good understanding of why we want to become a teacher. So maybe you have an inspirational story, things like that. You want to impact students in a positive way. And we're also going to research the school and what we're talking about in terms of what are the school goals, what are some things that the school has, maybe it's an art school, things like that. And that will help. Okay, it doesn't look like anybody has any questions. Let me go back to Facebook really quickly and just see if anybody has any questions in there. Great book. Yes. Good morning. Okay. Good morning. Yeah. It doesn't look like anybody has any questions. Are you guys sure? Oh, here we go. They're coming in. Okay. I teach math and I had an interview. They asked me what you would do if only a few students got the lesson. Okay. So this is a really good question, Lori. Thank you so much. So she had an interview for math and the principal said, what are you going to do if only a few students get the lesson? Well, the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to take a look at the data. So how do you know that they didn't get the lesson, right? Maybe the principal didn't communicate that with you. So the principal might have said, okay, you gave a test. And even if the principal doesn't give up this information, you can add it. You could say, okay, well, let's say I give a unit test and the majority of the students do not score adequately on that unit test, right? So the test is the data. Remember, we talked about using that data. So I would then disaggregate the data. That's kind of a big word. If you're not used to using it, you might mess it up. So you could say, I'm going to zero in on the data. That's what disaggregate the data means. And I'm going to look and see what skills students are missing. And then I am going to reinforce those skills through differentiated instruction, through small group, whatever it is, you're basically saying, okay, all these kids didn't get it. That's on me, the teacher. That's not on the kids. I know people don't like it when I say this. If the majority of your students did get the lesson, it's not their fault. There is a breakdown in instruction. Something didn't happen. And so we got to fix it. And so you're going to look at the data. You're going to then zero in on the skills that they are low in. You're going to reinforce those skills and you're going to retest. And you're going to do that until they get it. That's what teaching for mastery looks like. All right. So just remember that. Now, I know you're busy. I know you got to get through the lesson. I understand that. But we've got to do what we got to do in order to get the kids there. So let's break it down real quick. I'm going to look at the data and see where the kids are low. I'm going to find those skills. I'm going to differentiate either through small group or individual or however I need to differentiate to reinforce those skills. And then I'm going to retest and see how they do. And then if they still are struggling, I'm going to do that again. And I'm going to do it again until they get it. All right. Kimberly, will I be able to replay your video with this link? Yes, it's going to. Don't worry, Kimberly, your kids are interrupting. It's totally fine. I'm going to send you an email with everything you need. So don't worry about it. Okay. How do you respond to an interview where the principal and panel show no emotion? That makes me extremely nervous. It makes me think it's going horrible. Okay. That's really hard. I'll tell you that. When I interviewed for an assistant principal position, there were 3 panels I had to go through, 3 different rooms. I sweated through my suit. I had like big stains in my armpits on my suit. It happens. What you need to do is just be really confident and try your best to focus on something. It doesn't even have to be a person on the panel. You can look at something else, but you want to stare straight ahead. You don't want to stare down like this. And practice your responses to some of these questions and you'll feel better. Okay. So just make sure that you try not to fall down that rabbit hole with feeling like, oh my God, it's going terribly. Look, they need you. Okay. There is a teacher shortage. They need you more than you need them. That bottom line. So they can be all, and it might just be because they're interviewing so many people, like they're like tired. So don't take it personally and just keep moving forward. I know that's hard. Okay. What if they ask, what would you do if a child doesn't want to do the classwork and refuses? Okay. So this is a motivation question. So this is something where you would say, and there is no perfect answer to this. Look, you're a brand new teacher. The principal is not expecting you to solve all classroom management problems. A question like this means that the principal wants to know that you're going to do your best to motivate the student. And so you're going to find what that student is interested in. You're going to maybe evaluate when the student refuses to do work. Maybe it's during reading, maybe it's during math, and maybe that's because the student isn't very good at that. You've got to figure out, and here comes the data, and it could be observational data, it could be a conversation. You're going to figure out what motivates that kid and how you can tap into that motivation. And you're going to use that to help inspire the kid to keep going. And you're not going to give up. And you're going to fail at it sometimes. Some kids are just not going to do the work, but you're not going to stop trying. Okay, so that is a motivation question. That's a really good question. It's also a classroom management question. And so you can say, it's my job to motivate. And so I'm going to find what that kid likes to do, and I'm going to try to incorporate it into the lesson and get him or her to do the work. I teach pre-K. How do you answer a question about a child who is disrupting a lesson? Okay, so disruption. Disruption is all about classroom management. And so one of the things you want to communicate to the principal is, we will have established routines and procedures for my classroom. And I'm a firm believer, this is me talking here, I am a firm believer in praising positive behaviors and ignoring negative behaviors. Now, I know if a kid is like being crazy, it's very hard to ignore, but there is a technique called planned ignoring. And I was just speaking with somebody about this when they were talking about cell phones. When you ignore bad behavior and you pour all your energy into the kid who is doing really well and trying to make the lesson really, really good, and you say, wow, Jose, I love what you're doing here. Thank you so much. You just made my day. And this other kid, you're ignoring that kid. students will start to want to get your praise. Now, this isn't perfect, and I understand you're like, oh yeah, whatever. They're not going to listen to that. It actually works. I worked in high school. I was a reading teacher. I had very difficult students who had been failing reading their entire lives. They were not interested in doing my curriculum. And so some of that will help. You can talk about planned ignoring. You can talk about practice routines and procedures. You can talk about consequences in the classroom. If it's something that's very disruptive, you might move the child. You might use proximity control. And so those are some different things that you can talk about there. But the main thing there is, before we even get into the lesson, there are going to be established routines and procedures and communicated consequences for good and bad behavior. And so if it goes beyond that, then I would do some planned ignoring. I would do some proximity control. And then if I have to separate the student out from the group, then that's what I would have to do. And so that shows the principle that you have a layered way of dealing with some of these disruptions. Okay, schools give you only a short time to teach the lesson. How can you reinforce and reteach without getting behind on your lessons? Gabriella, this is something you're going to have to learn as a teacher. These are things that you'll get better and better at, but you can't leave kids behind if they don't understand it. So you're going to have to find time to reinforce and reteach. And if you fall behind, and there were times I fell behind, I would tell the principal, look, they needed more time. And so that's something you got to do. It takes a lot of practice, and there are ways to reinforce skills in 5 minutes. And so as you become better, as you become a more seasoned teacher, you'll learn how to do that. All right, Marvin, what's up, Marvin? Actually, I had an interview yesterday. My problem is, how do I stop rambling? Oh my God, it's my biggest problem. I am a rambler. What I've been doing to stop the rambling is I've been practicing waiting. Wait, why am I talking? That's what I say to myself. Why am I talking? Okay. And it doesn't always work, but what you could do, Marvin, is you could do something called the STAR method. And the STAR method is situation, task, action, result. Now, I want to warn people, when you use this method, it can get very robotic. So you have to be careful that you're using it conversationally and not just being like, the situation was this, the task was this, the action was this, and the response or the result was this. Okay. So if you want to kind of tame your responses, you can first start with the situation. So let's say right here, this Sharon was talking about a pre-K kid who is disrupting. All right. So the situation is disruption. So you might reiterate that. Okay, if I had a pre-kindergartner disrupting class, that's the situation. My task is to get that student back involved in the classroom and working properly in whatever we're doing. That's the task, okay? What is my action? My action would be either to use proximity control or planned ignoring, and focus on the students who are working really hard and really shower them with praise. So hopefully that will inspire the student who is disrupting to come on over and get some praise, right? And the result, here's the thing. The result might be that kid doesn't stop. The result might be a total failure, but you could say, hoping that the result would be that the student fixes his or her behavior. If not, I will try some other methods and collect some more data, do some more observations, figure out why the student is acting the way he or she is. So Marvin, if you want, you can kind of just take those 4 things: situation, task, action, result. It's the STAR method for answering questions. Just be careful you don't become robotic when you're doing that. Christina, what is the hardest question you have ever been asked in an interview? How did you answer it? Oh, well, I'll tell you that my assistant principal panel interviews were really hard. So, and I'm going to be doing another webinar series for admin. So if you're watching this and you're an administrator, you're trying to become an administrator, I'm doing the same 2-part series for administration in a couple of weeks. So that'll go up. But I had to go to the district office, and there were 4 panels, I believe, 3 or 4 panels. and you go from room to room. And inside each room are 3 to 5 people on the panel. So you go in, you get hit with these 5 people, then you go to the next room, you get hit with these 5 people. And so some of them, I can't remember an exact question, but a lot of them, when they ask, and how will you measure your results? These are things that a lot of assistant principals are asked. How will you know when it works? And the answer is to collect data and analyze the data. And if the scores go up, then we know it works, and to continue and to continue to progress monitor. That's another good word you can use, especially if you're talking about differentiation, progress monitor. And so I can't really remember the hardest question I've ever been asked. But I do remember the actual interviews, and they were very daunting, and it was hard, and I didn't know what I was saying some of the time. And I'm like, did I even answer that correctly? So it happens to everybody. But I do think, if Christina, you're asking about difficult questions, I think over here, like the one that Sharon asked me, what do you do if a student disrupts a lesson? That's very specific, and you're going to need to have an answer to that. And like I just went over that. Or what it was, if students don't get the lesson. If you're a brand new teacher and you don't know about differentiation, and you don't know about small group, and you don't know about collecting data and to inform your instruction, that type of question would really stump you. So Lori's question about if the students don't get the lesson, and I forget Sharon's question about the disruptive students, those are good ones to think about when you're going into the interview. And again, take a second to think. I was asked, what do I do if a student takes a 0 for an assignment? Okay, zeros for assignments. So, and a lot of teachers don't agree with me on this, but I don't believe students should be receiving 0s for an assignment. So I get slayed on online for this in the comments. So let me explain. The grading scale is 0 to 59 is an F. So almost 60 points is dedicated to F. When a student gets a 0, it is very difficult for the student to, bring that grade up. Because if we're talking about averages, that 0 drags the average down. Now, I know we have categories and some grades are weighted more than others, but even so, a 0 is like, it really puts them in a really difficult situation. And I know people say, well, if you don't go to work, you get fired. And if you don't do this, you get fired. Yeah, I get it. But this is school and they're kids, and the grading scale is not even fair. If 60 points is dedicated to an F, 10 points is dedicated to a D, 10 points is dedicated to a C, 10 points to a B, and 10 points to an A, you are more likely to fail with the grading scale. Way more likely. You're 60% more likely to fail than you are to get any other grade. So I have a whole video on that. You'll see the comments. People are like, you don't know what you're talking about. But I do know what I'm talking about, and I stand by it. When your principal is asking you about a 0, what your principal is probably asking you to do is to inspire that student to do something. So the student might not want to write an essay. The student might not want to do something. And I know you're busy, and I know you can't make new assignments for every student. But if the kid says, I'm just going to take a 0, you might want to have a conversation and say, well, why would you take a 0 if, what can I do to help you not take a 0? Is it the format? Would you like to present your knowledge in a different way? If we're talking about standards mastery, students can show that they've mastered a standard in a variety of ways. So you might want to adjust the assignment, make it still as rigorous as anything else, but maybe you give the student choices. And so in this case, I would say you want to motivate the student not to take the 0. You want to maybe rethink what a 0 means in your classroom, because a 0 isn't just an F, it's at the very bottom of the F scale. And I know, well, they did nothing, so they get nothing. Yeah, I get it. But the way the scale is set up, the math, it doesn't work right. And so it's almost impossible for them to get that 0 up. And that's why your principal is saying, please don't give them a 0, figure out another way. And so maybe there's an alternate assignment, maybe there's something else you can do. What if they refuse to do the work? I am student teaching right now, and I have a student in my class who just throws the paper on the ground or stuffs it in his desk and will not do it. My host teacher cannot get him to do it either. Okay, I'm not in the classroom, so I can't see everything that's going on. So I would say that there's a lot going on with the student. It could be motivation. It could be that the student doesn't have the skills to do the work. It could be that you're really going to have to work hard to get this kid to do something. And that means maybe changing up the assignment for the student, giving the student choices. And I know that you're busy and you have 25 other kids and all of that. But Katie, you are a student teacher. I would experiment a little bit with this and see it as a challenge because you're going to get this in every single class. So you might want to come up with 3 alternatives to the assignment that still measure the standards. So let's say, I'll just give you an example in my science class. So I taught biology, right? And if we had to show mastery of photosynthesis, like the processes of photosynthesis, I usually let students create a PowerPoint and then present it. This is a bigger assignment. Okay. This isn't a small assignment. Create a PowerPoint, present it, write an essay. Some kids just like to write an essay and get it over with. All right. Others, I had like some models that they could make and talk about it. And then if they wanted to do something else, and these are high school students, and they came to me and they're like, hey, I'd rather do this, and they gave me a rationale as to why, I would let them do it as long as they're showing mastery of the standards. Now you're talking about little kids, I believe, because if he's throwing the paper on the ground and stuffing in his desk, I'm going to assume this is elementary. You may want to have 3 things and say, hey, I don't know what his name is or her name. You might want to say, hey, Julie, I know you don't like to do the assignments, so I want to come up with a plan of something that interests you that's also aligned to the assignment. And so I came up with these 3 different options. Would you like to pick which one you're going to do? And maybe that'll work. It might work to have a conversation and say, hey, I really want to get you engaged in the class, and I don't want you to get an F. I don't want you to throw your paper down. What can I do to get you to want to do the work? What are some things you like to do? What are some things I can incorporate to help you do the assignment? I know you want to say they just don't do it, they get a 0. That's easy, but that's not our job. Our job is to inspire and get kids to work beyond their comfort zone. So, and there might be something else happening here. The kid might be going through something. His parents might be going through a divorce. He might obviously have behavioral issues. So you've got your work cut out with that one. But I would take it as like a research opportunity, Katie, because you're going to get that again outside your student teaching. So that's a really good question. So. All right. Anything else? We get 5 minutes at a job fair. What should I expect? You could get any one of these questions. I would definitely, like I said before, focus on using data to drive your instructional decisions, making sure everything you do is aligned to the standards. And, some of the good questions we had in here today, if a student doesn't get it, I'm going to really zero down in that data, figure out, differentiate, and reteach. Okay. So that's really important. You only have a couple minutes at a job fair, but if you can focus on state standards, data, differentiation, those types of things that the principal wants to hear, you're going to do better at the job fair. Okay. I can't believe I got under an hour here. So I think when I was sharing my screen before, I can't really tell. I just want to go over one more time. I'm so sorry. I think I was sharing my screen before when I had the PowerPoint up. So I was like a little tiny thing. So I just want to share real quick here. You can get Teach a Survival Guide for New Educators on Amazon here. Some of you said you got it. And you can get me on the TikTok. A lot of controversy on TikTok lately. Saw the congressional hearings. That was pretty hilarious. And you can, this new software has got me all kind of crazy. You can go to my YouTube channel under teacher training. I'm going to add some more videos here. I'll add the classroom management. I'll add the using objectives. I'll add the standards so that this particular thing has all of the videos that align with what I'm saying today. And I'll put it in the email. Before I send the email out today, I'll make sure that this link is in the email. So it'll be part of your resources. And one more thing. Oh, the most important thing, the course. So I'll be doing this 2-session course. Session 1, all about the resume. We're going to talk. We're going to be in it together. You're going to be able to show me what you got, and I'm going to help you. Okay. And then session 2 will be all about the interview. We're actually going to practice with real questions, and I will have, more documents and things like that for you there. Okay. All right. Any more questions before I log off? Well, it's been a pleasure working with you guys today. I love these live webinars. I'm going to be doing some more. I'm going to, excuse me, I'm going to be doing one for administration. So if some of you are trying to become administrators, I will be doing the same type of thing, but with an administrator mindset. That was quite a endeavor that I did when I became an assistant principal. It's really hard, but super rewarding and awesome. And yeah, all right. Check me out on YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and I'm so glad you guys spent the time with me today. Let me know if you have any questions, and I will see you soon. All right. Check your email in about an hour. I'll be there with all the links. All right. Have an awesome